B2A Solutions is your trusted IT consulting company located in the heart of Europe. We design, build, and maintain scalable and user-friendly solutions tailored to your needs. Want to join a team that is shaping the future of the JavaScript ecosystem in Belgium? A team involved in the community by organizing events and contributing to open source? Join B2A Solutions now.
With us, Simon Knott. He works for Netlify. That rings a bell. Netlify, wasn't that on Debbie O'Brien's
It was on Debbie's
t-shirt?
She has a t-shirt, but I have socks.
You win. You win. I mean, socks over t-shirts anytime. She mentioned they were free. I mean, the t-shirt was free.
The t-shirt, yeah, we
For
tend to
her,
throw
it
them
was
around.
free.
I didn't like. If you want a t-shirt, hit me up. I'm sure I can give you some.
It's
Not
hard to
today,
miss.
but sometime else.
Today, so you are the developer tooling at Netlify, right? So you're the creator of Criddle, which is, and I have to read it because, again, no clue what Criddle is, a job queuing solution for the Jamstack. You're extremely passionate about all things developer tooling, and you look forward to sharing with us, the audience here, physically in the room, the guys back home, if you're still there, hi. And you're pretty good, it says here, at DJing techno music and house music. So that's interesting. Ladies and gentlemen, let's hear it for Simon Knott.
All my ladies, pop your backs with it.
All right. Next time, do more beats. I want to dance. Yeah, cool. It's great to be here. I love being in Brussels. This is my first in-person conference talk at all, so I will be a bit excited, and sometimes I start speaking too fast. I will try to speak slower, so if I speak too slow, that's the reason. Let's just do a quick poll. Who of you has heard about React? Okay. Who of you has used React? Is currently using React? All right. Who of you has heard about Next.js? Okay. Who of you has used Netlify? All right, all right. Who of you has heard about Blitz? That is the response I was looking for, so today we'll learn something. I will introduce to you BlitzJS 2.0. If you don't know what BlitzJS 1.0 is, that doesn't matter, because I will basically do a full introduction to Blitz 2.0. It's the toolkit. That's why it says AKA toolkit. You'll learn more about that later. But before I introduce BlitzJS, let me introduce myself. This is exactly what she said before. And I'm also a level 2 maintainer at BlitzJS, which is the reason I'm here today. If you want to contact me, go to Twitter, GitHub, @Knott. That is a 0 in there. It's not easy to spell, but it's cool. So that's a 0 and not an O. BlitzJS. What is that? BlitzJS, on its website, it says it's the full-stack React framework. The as in the definitive. I think that's like, gotta shoot high, right? But full-stack React framework means that it's a framework for building full-stack apps, and full-stack meaning not so much content-heavy websites, not so much marketing pages, but rather applications, stuff that has a database, stuff that has users to manage, stuff that needs to do authentication and authorization, maybe job queues, background processing, emails, all those kinds of things. If you want to build a marketing page or like a content site, that's all very fine to do with Blitz. Blitz can do that, but the magic thing about Blitz really is building applications. And we also say in very small text here, we're inspired by Ruby on Rails. Who of you has used Ruby on Rails? Okay, Ruby was a very influential framework a couple of years ago. It still is, and we took over some of their values. Some of the core values being, we want to strive for super high productivity. We want to make it easy for you to build great apps fast. And we do stuff like convention over configuration. While you can configure stuff in Blitz, it will be fine by default. And there is a couple of features that I'd like to show you, or that I'd love to show you, but we don't have a lot of time. So I will show you the one unique selling point of Blitz, the feature that I saw and I fell in love with the project. And that's called the zero API data layer. That is fancy marketing speech. It doesn't say a lot, so I'll tell you what it means in a couple of slides, and then we'll do a demo afterwards with like live coding. Let's hope that works. Yeah. I brought some business logic. Imagine we're building a conference management site, maybe a management site for BJS, and we probably need some way to submit talks. We'd have business logic like this. It's like an asynchronous function. It's called submit talk. And when you call it, you give it some information about the talk you want to submit, the speaker, the title of the talk, maybe the length, some tags about what it is, all those kinds of things. And what it would do is it would create a record in the database, and then maybe send out a notification email to Ayman so he knows that there's a new talk in stock. And so you have this business logic. How would you access that from the client? Imagine you're building something with Next.js. How would you call that business logic function on your backend? And here's a small overview. What I do is I write an API route, which is this HTTP endpoint thing, similar to like a REST API. And I need to do some authentication, authorization. I need to make sure that I have the correct headers, serialize all the request and response bodies. And that's only for writing the back-end part. But then in the front end, you'd need to do all the fetching stuff. You'd need to decide whether to use the normal browser fetch or maybe use some abstraction like React Query or SWR or what have you. And I don't know about you, but that seems like a lot to do just to call a stupid function on the back end, right? This should just be a call. And I'll show you how this works with Blitz. With Blitz, the first part, the write an API route part, is just exporting as default. That's it. You just take your business logic, you do export default in front of it, and that's fine. And then the client-side stuff with Next.js or with Fetch, what you probably do is you have some like call for papers form, and in the onSubmit hook, you take the talk and do some fetch to /API/talks, and maybe you specify the post method, do some JSON headers, do some stringification. Maybe you'd need to worry about authentication headers. You'd need to remember that the header is called authorization, but it does authentication. You'd need to do all that stuff. And that, again, is a lot of code to write just to call a function. And in Blitz, you just import it and call it. That's it. You just do import submit talk from app/mutation/submit talk, and that file is this here. That's the same. You just import it, and then you call it. That's it. And there's a magic thing in here, as you probably imagined. The magic thing is this name mutations here. It needs to be in a folder called mutations, and I'll show you later why that is. Authorization is also a thing we need to do, or authentication. With Blitz, you can just add the second parameter to your function. So before we had this function, now we imported the context type from Blitz and added the second parameter. Every mutation, a mutation is what we call a function that can be called from the front end that mutates data. There's also queries, which are for reading data. Every mutation can have two arguments. The first argument is an object with all the stuff you want to pass into it, right? That could be anything. And the second argument is a bunch of meta stuff, a bunch of context things. And in our case, we can call context.session.authorize. And if the requesting browser is not authorized, if they are not authenticated, and if they don't have the necessary rights, so we could pass like some expressions for what roles or rights the user needs to have. If it's not authorized, it would just throw an error, abort everything, and that's it. But you don't need to worry about it, and calling this is enough. That's all you need to do. That is cool to see in slides. Let's see a demo. Is that big enough? No, it's not. Let's zoom in a bit. So I wrote this small page here. Let's actually look through the file structure of a Blitz application. This is a demo we built on Wednesday in my workshop about BlitzJS. Shout out to Miroslav and Brigitte. Brigitte is somewhere there. Miroslav is also somewhere. We built that together in the workshop. And if we look at the files, This looks very similar to a Next.js application. You see the same pages folder, you see the same next.config.js file, because Blitz applications are Next applications. Blitz is, and that's why it said toolkit on the first slide, Blitz is a collection of library or a collection of helper utilities on top of Next.js. So everything you know from Next, you can just take to Blitz. Everything works. Blitz is just built on top. And so I added a page and pages/talks.tsx, and that is what you're seeing right now. It exports this component talk list, and for now it just has some placeholder talks, one about Wallace and Gromit, about going to the moon. I suppose if they lived today, they'd make like a cryptocurrency about cheese. And it's just some placeholder task. But what we want to do is fetch that data from the database, right? I already prepared a database here. We have a couple of talks here. You might have heard about these titles. These are the talks that are happening today. And we'd like to query them. We'd like to show them in the front end. And what we'll do for that is we'll go into our app folder, and we will, in the queries folder, add a new file called getTalks. I already did that. And this is how it looks. It just exports as default an async function, in our case called getTalks. And this then uses the database to find many talks. And it will return, if you look here, it will return an array of talks. This is behind the scenes Prisma. Prisma is a great database access library, which has super good TypeScript support. I love it. It makes it really, really fun to work with data. And just if you haven't tried out Prisma, try it out. I bet you'll like it. And if you don't like it, tell me why. And now this is just a normal function. To call that in the front end, we go back to our talks component here, and we'll import get talks from app/queries/get talks. That's it. And this is still the same function. And now what you can do is, instead of using the placeholder talks, I've removed that, you could just call get talks. Oh no, you can't, because in React components you can't use promises, right? And we have a helper for you there, which is the use query helper. We can import it from at BlitzJS/RPC. Talk about the RPC bit in a bit. We can import use query, and then we can pass get talks to use query and pass it some parameter. We need to put undefined so the TypeScript is happy, but now this use query hook will return two things. The second thing we can ignore, but the first thing is exactly our array of talks. And now when I press back on the site, or if I save it before, you'll see that nothing changes. I need to reload. And that is just the talks from the database. And now I'm going to show you a funny thing. So this is the database UI, right? And if I change something in here, maybe I change the name of the introduction to BlitzJS toolkit to hello Gromit, and I save the change, nothing's going to happen here. But if I'm now hovering my cursor over this page, and now I'll click. And the moment I click, this updates. Why does it do that? This use query helper here is super, super smart. It's really cool. What it does, so it's based on a library called React Query by Tanner Lindsley. Some of you may have used it before. And it tries to do some smart things around making data appear live. And what it does is it checks if you are in a different tab, or if you are not focused on your browser. And the moment you refocus on your browser, for example, because you're checking back into that tab, it realizes, okay, maybe I should refetch my data. Maybe I should refresh what's there. And that's why this automatically updates, which I find really cool. And let's take a look at the pages behind that. So, for example, if we press on It's All About Components, or some other talk, you have the title here. That is that page here. So there's the title. There is an empty abstract right now, so let's change that. The secret life of package managers, npm, yarn, pnpm, and everything about them. Expertly delivered. And I save that, it will immediately appear here. And now let's talk about mutations, which is the counterpart of queries. Queries are for reading data and mutations are for writing data. The difference is that when data is read, we know that we can reread it as often as you want. We can do that like optimistic refetching for you. With your mutations, that's not a good idea because you don't want to write to your database multiple times without you knowing, so we have a difference there. And in this case, we added a mutation called attend talk. And that is located in the mutations folder. It looks very much the same than our query, but just in a different folder. And this takes the second context object. And we do this context.session.authorize. And now let me show you another really cool TypeScript trick. If we want to access the user ID of the requesting browser, we can go to context.session.userid. And if we hover over this, we'll see that it's either a number or null. Because if that session is not authorized, if we didn't check if that user exists, or if that session exists, it could just be that there's no user logged in. So it's null, or it could be null. But now let me copy this statement to below this user ID line. And this is still number or null, but below, it's only a number. Anybody have an idea what's happened here? Cool, then it's a good magic trick. The way this works is it uses some type guard feature of TypeScript. If we hover over this authorize call, we can see that it has a return type saying asserts this is authenticated session context. And this session is some session context. We have a different type that is authenticated, where we know that the user ID exists. And when you call authorize, this tells TypeScript that if this call goes through, then it's an authorized user. But if the user is unauthorized, that call will immediately throw an error. So there's no way that an unauthorized user will ever come to this line. And that allows you to just use the user ID without having to check if it exists, and it's still fully type safe. And I just really like that. All right, so how does this work? So you authorize your session. You could say, I only want this to be available to admins, and then it would only be available to admins. And then we updated the talk. Oh, this is still from a workshop. Hello, Miroslav. We updated talk, where the talk ID is the one that's being passed in, and we connect some attendee. That is like Prisma-specific code. Prisma, again, this database library, we bundle that for you in a pre-generated Blitz application, but you can change it out for something different. And then in your talk page, what we do is if we press on that attend talk button, then it will, what we could just do is actually call attend talk and give it a talk ID. And this would probably, talk ID, this would probably be the the easiest way to call a function. That doesn't work for TypeScript type reasons, because there's this context object and we can't pass that from the client side, so we have this invoke helper. But really, I think in JavaScript you could actually just do this. In JavaScript you could just call it, because JavaScript wouldn't do type checks. And then what we do below is do this talk meta.refetch. Talk meta is the second object you get back from your query, and refetching means that it will just update. And now if we press attend, and now if we press attend, it will not work. That is the magic of live demos. I don't know what happened there, but I will one check. So there was this thing I wanted to show you. What was it? It was how all of this works. Because this looks very magic, does it? Like, how can we just import something from the front end and have it access the database? Like, The easiest solution would be to open up your database publicly to the internet and just have the browser call it, but that is a very bad idea for a whole lot of reasons. So you want an API in between. You want an API that has authorization. You want an API that doesn't show all of your code publicly. And now comes the interesting part. I told you that these queries and mutations, that these folders are magic. We added a compile time plugin to Next.js. I think that works via Webpack, so you've heard about it before. And every time we encounter an import from either queries or mutations, we replace it. So what we do is we take away this import and write instead const attend talk is just a function that takes some parameters and does fetch to /API/blitz/rpc/attend talk and passes the parameters. That's it. That's everything that happens. And then we generate the RPC API for you. And this /API/blitz/rpc/attend talk is this file. I think it's just /rpc. That's this file. And this just will make the calls to your mutations and queries. So really what happens is, this is called the zero API data layer, but it's not because there's zero API, there is one, we just generated it for you. But it's called zero API data layer because you don't need to worry about it. You don't need to write fetch calls, you don't need to write API routes, you don't need to write authorization code or authentication code. You still need to do authorization because that's just impossible to generate. But you don't need to do the boring stuff of APIs. And that really is the one magic trick that made me fall in love with the project. When I saw that, I was, okay, this is it. This is how we'll build APIs in the future. And I've built multiple projects with Blitz, for example, Quirrell that was mentioned, their dashboard is in Blitz, and I haven't been as productive in any other framework since. And that's cool. I like that. But let's get back to the slides. That was a long demo, and most stuff worked, so I'm happy. Let me show you some other main features. I already mentioned some of them. So I mentioned the pre-built authentication and authorization. When we generate a project for you, when you do Blitz new and generate a project, we generate some authentication logic for you, and that works for getting started. But we allow you to customize the logic. We have these basic building blocks about how we implement it internally, but all authentication logic you can just customize yourself, because let's be honest, most applications at some point have a different way of doing authentication. We have a batteries included starter template, including Prisma. That is what you saw. Defer. We have a type-safe routes manifest. That's a way, like sometimes with Next applications, you need to specify those links, next link, and then you have some href, and you need to do that with string templating. We generate this routes object where you can in a type-safe way link to a specific other page. We have recipes for setting up libraries. For example, you could run blitz install tailwind CSS. Then it would automatically set up Tailwind, would automatically configure everything, and you could just start writing Tailwind. We also do the same for Chakra UI and Quirrell and some other projects. So that's what we do. And there's code scaffolding, so you can run Blitz generate and then some things about your model, and it would generate a whole lot of code scaffolding, so you don't need to write it yourself. And there's a bunch of other features, but those are the main ones. So to those of you who have used Blitz before, you may have heard about the pivot, or you may be surprised, hey, there's a V2, there wasn't even a V1 before. And let me tell you about that. So the V2 changes some internal workings with Blitz. Before, Blitz was a fork of Next.js, and even before it was compiled to Next.js, but for the better part of last year, we forked Next.js. At the time, that seemed like a great decision. In hindsight, as all things, it doesn't. Next.js is a very active project, and it's just hard to keep up with development. And now, Blitz V2 is changing, instead of being a fork of Next.js and implementing our features as part of their code base, to being a toolkit on top of Next.js. So your application will be a very, very standard Next application with our library sprinkled on top, but that means that it works exactly the same and on exactly the same deployment providers than any other Next application. As a user, things will stay similar, and if you already have a Blitz application, there'll be a pretty straightforward migration guide with some stuff automated or most stuff automated even. And right now, Blitz is an alpha. You can already, or Blitz v2 is an alpha, you can already try it out. And don't ask me when we'll go to full v2, that's not a question you ask. There's more information about that on the Blitz docs. Some future ideas from this pivot are we could actually add support for Remix. There's no reason to only support Next.js. We could add better background processing, pre-built file uploading, helpers, email stuff, full stack logging, just some ideas. If you have ideas about what Blitz absolutely needs to support, please come to me, tell me, and I will make sure it happens. All right, before I conclude, here's some takeaways for you, or the things that I think you should take away from this talk. BlitzJS is a framework for building full-stack applications. It can do content sites and marketing sites, and those things it can do like equally well as Next.js. But the things that BlitzJS adds on top of Next are full-stack things, are things that have to do with a database, that have to do with authentication, with authorization. It's based on Next, and it saves you from building APIs. You only need to write your business logic, but you don't need to write your APIs anymore. It saves you from building authentication, which can be a hassle in the beginning, and lots more, but these are the main things. And if you don't remember anything else, please remember that zero API data layer, because that's the thing I care about. That's the thing I love. And the most important feature of all, Blitz has an awesome community. We're a bunch of very lovely people. There's an active Discord, so if you're now like, wow, go check out Blitz, join the Discord, say hi. Yeah, and I'm now taking questions. Thank you all.
B2A Solutions is your trusted IT consulting company located in the heart of Europe. We design, build, and maintain scalable and user-friendly solutions tailored to your needs. Want to join a team that is shaping the future of the JavaScript ecosystem in Belgium? A team involved in the community by organizing events and contributing to open source? Join B2A Solutions now.